What is up, Bucky fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing fantastic. And to all the people out there in the US, happy 1st of May out there in America, and happy 2nd of May to the people here in Australia. And today I'm here with a very special guest. Now, he is an actor who's best known to fans as Bucky from Bucky the Grappler and Doflamingo from One Piece, but he's also best known from series such as Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho, Psycho Pass, Fairy Tail, Attack on Titan, Witch Switchblade, Casino Stigma, and many more. Please welcome Robert McCollum.
Hey Simon, how are you, sir? Happy Saturday. I feel like I'm a time traveler because it's Friday night here and it's Saturday morning there.
It does kind of feel that way just a little bit. But I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I was so excited to hear you introduce me as Baki the Grappler, because that is not a title that anyone ever knows or ever references. So the fact that you said, "Hey, all you Baki fans," unless there's some kind of strange Australian Rodriguez searching for Sugar Man thing going on where that show is huge in Australia and nowhere else, then you will be the only person who has referenced Baki the Grappler. So that makes me very happy.
Oh,
You've done me a
fantastic.
huge service, sir.
Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. Well, you never know. You'll be surprised about how many fans there are that actually speak about certain roles, like that actors like typically would think like, oh, I didn't know they would know me from such and such. Because that reminds me of a very funny story of I did an interview a few years back with Chuck Huber, Android 17 from the Dragon Ball series, and one fan commented out to me saying that most people don't even talk about like this role that he did in this one anime, and I was probably the first person to mention about that in the questions I asked him, which was crazy. So there you go.
We all have those favorites that we love that nobody else paid attention to or that didn't get a lot of love at the time. And Baki the Grappler was definitely one of those for me. So what was do you remember what the Chuck Huber role was that no one remembered?
No, I can't exactly remember which role it was, but I still read through the comments and people were like, oh yeah, oh yeah, nobody ever talks about this one role that he did. I'm like,
I'll have to look it up so I can call him that. Chuck is another North Texas voice actor who I know and love, and someday post quarantine I will see him again. So I'll have to go back and listen to his interview just so I can talk to him about it.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Now, speaking about, of course, with the quarantine, obviously during this difficult time with the pandemic at the moment, how have you been keeping things up, especially on the voice acting side of things?
Well, weirdly, voice acting is one of the few things that have kind of kept going. I kind of feel really lucky and guilty because, especially, I do a lot of commercial voiceover work and industrial corporate voiceover work, and that was one of the few things that they were like, "Oh, we have to get this done. Can you record it in your home studio? Can you record it at your house?" So right after the shutdown happened, there was actually a whole lot of auditions that went out, mainly because every commercial had to be revoiced and changed because they couldn't shoot a new commercial, but the old one seemed wildly insensitive. Like, "Hey, come out and hang in our pizza place." Like, that was wrong. So what everybody did is instantly start putting together commercials with stock footage or their old footage, and then a new, very, very serious and concerned sounding voiceover, all of which began somewhere around the lines of, "In this difficult time, we're all in this together." And it was like office supplies, restaurants, corporations, everybody was trying to find new voiceovers. So there was actually a lot of work still going on. And then Funimation, which is a huge recording operation here in just outside of Dallas, of course, had to shut down for quite a while in figuring that out because it's a massive building with 10 studios and people coming in and out by the hour. But they have now figured out a way to transition to home recording and have worked out the technology and now are starting to record. I know My Hero Academia just started releasing new episodes, and they had the plate on there. These were all recorded from home, which was kind of cool because it was a nice thing for the fans to feel like, oh, these voice actors are still committed and still trying to do it one way or another. So it's going to be really interesting to see how long that continues. But yeah, we're back up and rolling now. So there are more episodes to come, which is exciting.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic right there. Now, we'll obviously get into talking about like these brand new episodes of a lot of these series you've been working on, but on to like starting at the beginning of your career. How did you get started in acting?
Well, I was a marketing and sales guy. I had done a lot of acting in high school and then kind of left it in college to be a real grown up and get a real job. And then I moved to Dallas, Texas for a sales position and found out that there was a pretty vibrant acting community here. There was commercial work here, there was television work here, there was a lot of theater happening here. And so kind of snuck in through the back door and got an agent and started auditioning for commercials. Most people say, "Oh, I was the artist and doing theater, and then eventually found my way into commercials." I totally backwards. I was a sellout from the very beginning. I was just doing commercials and cheesy marketing, and then went that route into more legitimate acting and also improv comedy. Started doing a lot of improv comedy here in Dallas, and that opened a lot of doors and how got me into the acting community, and also led me to animation. Actually, that's the path.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that's really interesting how you spoke about like you started out in like the kind of voiceover realm, whereas most actors when they start out have started in that kind of very live action sort of realm in like a theater productions and all that kind of stuff. Because I remember that I did this interview yesterday with Joshua Seth from the Digimon series, in that most of his start actually got from theater productions and from live action work before he transitioned into voiceover work, which to this day he's still doing like live productions. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then I moved that direction as well. I started doing a lot more on camera and hosting things, both acting roles and also hosting and presenter roles. But at the same time, was doing a lot of voiceover, and one of the guys that I knew from Dallas who was doing improv comedy at the time was named Mike McFarlane,
Oh wow.
and a very well known name for people fans of anime, Master Yoshi in Dragon Ball. And he had started working out at Funimation and said, "Hey, they really need people." And at this point, it was a tiny office. No one, Dragon Ball had just hit in the United States. It wasn't huge. Anime itself was not huge. We're talking 1997, 98, somewhere around in there. A lot of the American audience hadn't even heard of anime at that point,
Wow.
except for the really dedicated fans. And so, just weirdly going to this strange little studio above a bank in a far suburb of Dallas and going in, and they're like, "Okay, Had, just say these words." And they had the giant tape-to-tape machines where they would have to spool back and spool back and spool back and then hit record and then play it and then play it forward, and then you had to wait for them to rewind again and listen to it back. Very low tech, but also there wasn't like a demand. It wasn't like people wanted to, we're struggling and pining to do voice work in anime. It wasn't a thing anybody knew was a thing, but it was just like, "Hey, you're free and you're in town, come do this thing." And so a lot of those early roles were not even necessarily like competitive auditions. They were just, "Oh, you're in the building right now. Okay, you're going to be this guy. All right, you're going to be in this role." And sometimes that would be a one-off, and sometimes that would end up being something that came back year over year. But you never knew, because there was so little information, and it was also kind of pre-internet where it was all just going straight to release VHS and then straight to release DVD. And it was all after the Japanese product was done and already released. It was kind of an add-on. When they wanted to release it into the U.S. market, they would just put the American track on as an extra added feature on the DVD. And the world has changed greatly, and now we're doing simuldubs, and Sony owns Funimation, and this Funimation channel is one of their most popular products now, and the world is very much aware of anime. But back then, it was really just a, "Hey, a guy, come in." It seemed really seedy, like, "Psst, hey, buddy, come in, come do voiceover, come do voiceover."
Fantastic.
And of course, no money, because no one was paying anything in those days.
Right. That's absolutely fantastic right there. Now, with obviously we're talking about with the variety of the roles that you've done across your career. Have you ever turned down a role for any particular reason?
There have been some that were a little too racy, and I have done a few of those as well. But like I did one under an assumed name, and then within a week it was on the internet as like under the name blank. So like, well, that didn't work. And especially like for a while, I was hosting a morning show here in Texas. I was the host of a show called Good Morning Texas, and there was like a public persona. And so I thought maybe I shouldn't do some of the more adult-themed stuff. Now nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody cares about Rob McCollum or what he did or what naughty words he said. Even my daughters don't care at all. So I would be less worried now. But there was a time where I'm like, yeah, maybe pass on some of those. And you know, I try to. We don't know a lot of times what the content is going to look like when we get into a show. We kind of rely on the directors, but they're good about letting us know, like, hey, these are the things that happen in this show. Make sure you're okay signing off and being a part of these things. And there have been a few that I've passed on either for racial sensitivity reasons or just the nature of the content that I've passed on.
Right.
But
it's interesting that you mentioned about that, because I know it was quite a while back that Funimation had announced that they were not dubbing, I think, this one particular series that was supposed to be dubbed in English due to the nature of its content at that time. Because I think that Funimation as a series, even though they have pushed into anime that has gone into like slightly bizarre territory, generally for the most part they've tried to screen anime that's open to general audiences. At least that's what I've noticed myself.
Well, and it kind of depended on the different times of Funimation, because it's changed hands several times over the years and moved back and forth between ownership and with a different focus. But once they really realized, like, oh, we want to be a hub for family-friendly entertainment, and this has become a true market in the United States and a real viable marketplace, they started to be a little more cautious. And you know, in those early days, it was just everybody bidding on everything that came out of Japan. Everyone just tried to get the rights to whatever to be the U.S. distributor, not knowing what was going to hit, and then hope that something hit. Like the early Funimation got Dragon Ball Z, and suddenly that became a phenomenon, and they were always just looking for the next thing. So they were just cranking out constant content, hoping that something would be the next big thing. Now it's a lot more sophisticated. There are much more markets. Of course, Sony is now the owner of Funimation, so there's a much higher level of thought and conversation going on about what content they can get and who they're fighting with. Also, the market shrunk drastically. There's only a few major dub houses that are still doing the dubs from Japanese animation and releasing it in the U.S., both the Japanese and American side. And yeah, there's marketing arm and packaging and distribution and all these other parts of the building that were never a thing, where it used to just be a studio and you did the American dub and that was it. Now it's a very sophisticated operation.
Absolutely, and that's definitely true on that, because I know there have been several productions or companies that have dubbed and distributed anime that have gone into several kind of market. They have done different kind of marketing approaches, as you mentioned about before. Like when Funimation first started, it was open to getting anything that was popular at the time, or like the biggest thing at the time. Nowadays, as you said, they're trying to be more conservative about the types of content that they dub. Whereas on the other side of that, I know that ADV Films, or Sentai, which is best known for doing Evangelion, has pushed into the anime at that time that was really out there, especially for an anime series at its time, and Evangelion being the best example of that. So yeah.
Well, I think that was also in nature of what they could get the license to. They were just trying to find their niche, and Evangelion was a great property, and definitely was meant towards the older adult fan scene. And that was also an educational arc for the U.S. market, because people still thought, because it was animated, it was meant for little kids in the early days. And Dragon Ball very much fit that vein of being for young people. But as you know, as anyone who follows anime knows, that anime covers the depth and breadth of everything in society. It's just the way the manga does as well. Like, you can find anime about anything for any audience, whether it's the drudgery of a corporate work job, all the way up to, battling demons in space. So it took a while for the American audience to realize that just because it was animated didn't mean it was necessarily just for kids.
Right. That's definitely true on that. And you absolutely hit the nail right on the head with that. In that anime can scope out to not just for kids, but also to a huge a general thing there. As you mentioned about before, like from the unfortunate events of like a corporate job to battling against space demons, it can cover so much within that one style. It's definitely true. Now, speaking about, of course, with the manga, actually. Now, as mentioned about before, that anime is based on manga. Have you ever read the manga for any anime series that you've worked on, or you heard or became familiar with a project before you started working on that series?
Actually, I don't often, and it was based on some early advice I got from a director, there's Chris Bevins, who's a very prolific anime director and voice actor, um, was working with me on a show and said specifically, I don't want you to read ahead. I don't want you to read this. Because sometimes when you get a role, you go out and buy it. And I will say that there's not really many cases where I would have read it beforehand and one and after. I definitely was aware of Attack on Titan and knew that was going to be a huge deal because both the manga and the Japanese version of the anime was huge. So we were all aware of that and kind of gunning for it and looking for, was Funimation going to get the rights to do that, and were we going to be able to audition and what we were going to audition for. But on the most part, his advice was don't read ahead because you don't need to know more than the audience knows. If
Right.
your character is written with a secret or with a surprise, if you know that ahead of time, there's the danger that you're going to play that before it's time.
Hmm.
If you think you're the sweet, nice neighbor, and it turns out, 40 episodes later that you are the criminal mastermind, you would be tempted to play that with a kind of twisty mustache, Snively Whiplash kind of bad guy vibe. But the goal of the animation is you only know as much as you know at that point in the show. So play it straight, play it like the nice guy until you're no longer the nice guy. And his advice was don't read. And I know that frustrates some fans because they want us to be as big of a fan of the project as they are. But in terms of us creating our part of the puzzle, I found it actually works to my advantage to be kind of the oblivious uncarved block when I walk in the studio and let the director get what he or she wants out of me, because if I come in with really clear ideas, I think I'm a smart guy and I think I'm a genius and everything I'm going to suggest is perfect, but it's not my job in that place. I need to bring them what their vision is. So I actually don't get really involved with reading ahead of the time.
Right, fantastic. Now, as mentioned about before, with obviously wanting to not know more than what the fans are expecting of in that time. For any long-running series or any series where you're playing a character that is featured prominently across the series, do you have an idea for like the story arc that you're working in, like where your character is going, or and the overall story, or are the scenes you record like out of context?
Well, for the most part, they are out of context except for the conversations with the director. And it is the anime director's job is such a weirdly specific, strange hybrid job that is unlike any other anywhere in media. In that they are coming in with people that are doing maybe 1 minute and then of screen time, and then that character may not come back for another 5 episodes. And it is the director's job to inform the actors as we come in the booth what the universe is and how much of that we need to know. And so they usually do a very good job of explaining what's happening, what are the stakes, who are the forces at play, especially if you're coming in the first time recording on something. There can be times when you get a call and you don't even know what you're going in to read for. You just have a session on the books and you go in, and it's the director's job to say, okay, here's what's happening. These guys have come from another planet. They're attacking this planet. These guys are the good guys, but they've made a big deal with the general that you're working for, and you're now starting to suspect, but you respect him because you worked with him for 30 years. Like, it may be that short of a brief, or you might get a full story and you may know the whole story of the whole universe. It
Right.
just kind of depends on the individual director and how large a character you're coming into.
Fantastic. Right. Now, obviously, going into a little bit before we start getting into more of your most well-known roles, what was your first voiceover role?
I tried to actually look that up. I don't actually know the answer to it. I know I was on some early episodes of Case Closed, which was a long-running, crime procedural series. It was like the Japanese Murder She Wrote, but with a little kid genius solving crimes. I know I was on a bunch of Case Closed, and I guess one of my first main roles was a guy in a show called Desert Punk. But in terms of the first role, and I wish I knew because I get asked that all the time, and I actually have no idea. I know it was sometime in 1998 or maybe 1997. But I don't know what the first role really was. The first big role, the first major role was as teenage Goten when Dragon Ball Z, morphed into Dragon Ball GT. I got to play the teenage version of Goten, and that was the first like major role in a major property that you knew like, oh, this is a big deal. But and also when you've been doing it this long, this many years, the memory really goes. So I have a little list that I keep at my booth at conventions when I'm signing, so that when people come up and go, "Oh, you were in this show," I can go, "Yeah," and look down at my cheat sheet to see, especially how to spell the name of the character. Because even if I remember the name of the character, I probably don't know how to spell it. So I keep my little cheat sheet there from one of the websites that has all of them. The nice thing is you don't have to remember. There's so many websites now, Animated News Network and Behind the Voice Actor. You can just pull it up and see all of the roles, and I have a cheat sheet just because I don't even remember them.
Fantastic, and that's definitely true on that because I remember this one time that when Alec Guinness, who to many people know as Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars universe, used to go to conventions quite a fair bit, but he actually spoke about when he was alive how frustrated he was that people mostly only remembered him from Star Wars, but not from the other roles that he was known for. So,
yeah, he's one of the world's premier actors, and started the National Theatre in the UK. Worked with Olivier in the early days when they were making all of that happen, and so. I think over time he got used to it, but the idea that like, oh, a sci-fi movie is what I'm known for. I did Lear.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But
I have no such artistic pretensions. I'm fine with people knowing me as Doflamingo from One Piece.
Fantastic. Now, speaking about, of course, with Dragon Ball, my intro to your work was, in fact, from the Dragon Ball series, where you played the teenage version of Goten from the final arcs of Dragon Ball Z, but you also played a variety of other characters from across the Dragon Ball universe. What was it like stepping into that world?
Again, a lot of times, like I said, in those early days, that was kind of the Wild West days where you would just show up and they would book you for an hour, and then they would try to use you for as many things as they could. And so they would call you in with one specific role, and then they would literally shop you around the building, meaning going to the other rooms and going, "Hey, Rob's here. Do you need him for anything? Hey, he's here. Can you use him for anything?" And so you might be, Soldier A and Man Reacting in the Crowd 43, and these characters, thrown by, and then sometimes they'll be like, "Hold on, okay, you're going to be this creature," or I remember in one of the Dragon Ball Z movies, I got to be Meloja, who was a religious cult leader who just got to pray loudly, "Oh, great leader," and it was very fun. But usually those were totally spur of the moment, and you have no idea, no preparation. I would love to say that in those early days we were all like doing our research and coming up with our backstory and figuring out the vocal range of the character, but a lot of times it was literally walk into the booth, look at the picture, listen to the Japanese performance, and go.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful about that. Now, I did an interview once with Carl Hebert where he spoke about Gohan quite a fair bit. And I'm actually reading these quotes off from the interview I did with him, where he said what he wanted out of the character going forward, which I think he was speaking a little bit about what the fans have been asking for a long time, which was I was always hopeful Gohan will be able to reach his true potential. I just want Gohan to really have his day, you know? So, so it was pretty interesting to hear. It was a little bit funny and pretty interesting to hear, like him speak about like Gohan in such a way that is what we've been asking for a very long time. What is it that you personally want to explore going forward in the Dragon Ball universe?
Well, I always thought Goten was everyone thought of him as a screw up, and of course he accidentally launched the ship that kind of kicked off a whole lot of problems. But he was just trying to get a date. He was a pure teenage dude in that way of he just wanted someone to like him and be nice to him, and so it was a constant chase. And I think all of his issues of trying to prove himself later, and when he comes back, much more powerful and trying to fight people, it still goes back like he just needs a date. He just needs a date, or maybe he and Trunks could finally get together. I know that's what a lot of people wanted. A lot of people ship Goten and Trunks. They have a lovely brotherhood that I cannot deny, and maybe that's all. Maybe that's all he needed.
Right. Well, of course, because I do remember, like, I think they spoke about for the because many fans have been asking for a long time about like when is the next Dragon Ball series going to come out? Are we going to get more Dragon Ball after Dragon Ball Super and all that kind of stuff? And I think it was confirmed by several of the actors saying that yeah, like there'll obviously be more Dragon Ball coming down in the future. And I think the creator for the series, Toriyama, I think said that possibly for the next Dragon Ball series, he's looking at going back to its roots, like all the way back to the original Dragon Ball series. So I'm really interested to see them go back into that more martial arts based style that they had in the original series, but still keeping true to what we've seen since the beginning, really. So that's...
Yeah, it's really interesting because people have such a huge history with this, a long connection to it. But we live in a very different time. The anime viewer is a much more sophisticated viewer than back, 20, 25 years ago when that, or really 30, when that began. And so it's a question of, if you went back, would it have to be updated and brought into a more modern storytelling, or would there be a great nostalgia for that total throwback of like, no, this is just a tournament show. We're just gonna fight and see who wins. And it's interesting to wonder if that would succeed, or if it's gonna take some updating to bring it into more, I guess three-dimensional storytelling, because I feel like that's where anime has gone over time, is that the stories have gotten more complicated. I mean, you look at something like Attack on Titan, which is an incredibly complex story, and not only the bad guys versus good guys, but personal loyalties and internal struggles, and so much that has gone on. So it's like, can a Dragon Ball that's just a fighting show still work in an environment where that is now something fans also have embraced? I don't know. It's an interesting question. I certainly hope it goes on. I really think Goten as a standalone series is a great idea. Yeah, unfortunately, no one's called me yet. But if anyone's listening, I think they should absolutely do a Goten spin-off series that's just the trials and travails of Goten.
Fantastic. That would be really fantastic if that ends up coming to life.
If you can make that happen, Simon, your power in the anime universe is huge, and I will laud you till my dying day if you can make that happen.
I'll do what I can on that part. Now, another role that comes to mind for me was Doflamingo from One Piece. What was it like playing that character and in the world of One Piece?
Well, it's another one of those shows that has just gone on and gone on and gone on forever. And the journey of any One Piece character, if you're not one of the Straw Hats, maybe, is that you kind of don't ever know when they're going to come back, because they don't, they track with the manga, but the schedules are such that like, oh, I know this character is going to come back at some point in time. I have no idea when. So it would just go away for a year, and then all of a sudden you get another session like, oh, Doflamingo's back. And then it would go away for 2 years, and then, oh, Dolphy's back. and and then again you kind of that character drifts to the back of your mind and you forget about him for a little while, and then just recently I got to record a whole new arc that is very Doflamingo centric that I don't think has been released yet, so I'm probably not supposed to say that, but it will be out eventually. And I think that the Japanese is already out, so I think we're fine. I don't think we're spilling any beans there. But yeah, it's great to kind of revisit these. They're like old friends that live out of town, and then they come in to visit every once in a while. That's kind of how I feel about Doflamingo.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful, and that's definitely true about how you spoke about the arc that's all about Doflamingo in the story. Because for any fans of the anime that will know, like they obviously have gone past that story well ahead in the Japanese version of the story, but we haven't got that yet into the dubbed version. But they have, as you mentioned about, of course, with My Hero Academia, they've started dropping more dubbed episodes, and now One Piece is doing the same thing. Because last year, when they did One Piece Stampede, was when Colin Clinkerbit and Justin Cook announced, yeah, we're doing more dubbed episodes. And speaking of which, with One Piece Stampede, which of course last year was the 20th anniversary of One Piece as a whole, were you aware of like how long that series had been going on for? Like it was literally hitting 20 years last year, and how did it feel to celebrate like a huge milestone like that?
It was great. It was great to be a part of it, and also to realize how important that was to people, and what a huge fan base it had in the United States as well. Because that's massive in Japan, but it is global. In the UK, in Australia, everywhere, people actually listen to the dubs, which is crazy to me. But the fact that it was such a huge thing, they did a fun thing with in Funimation where they had one of the staffers try to watch all of the episodes in a single go. It was like 3 solid days, and we would all go visit him in the studio, and he would take sleeping breaks, and they live broadcast all of it. I don't think he made it. I think he ended up in the hospital for staying in the same room for 3 days and watching a screen. I don't think he made it all the way through, but it was impressive. But it also makes you realize how much content there was. Oh my God, there's 20 years. I mean, I think the new episodes that Colleen was talking about us recording, and we have gotten ahead and recorded several of those, but they haven't been released yet. I think we're in the 700s now.
Last time I think last time the dubbed episodes, at least for me anyway, because I've watched all 574 episodes of the series. Well, not for 3 days straight.
Right.
But
We're in 500 now on the dubs, and they're in 700 in the Japanese. That's what it is.
That's
or they've announced that 700 is going to be their goal. Maybe that's what it was. Have they said? Because I also heard, and again, this may all be fake news, but that the creators had actually announced an end, that they had a specific number that they were going to write, and that they knew where the arcs were going to go, and that it was going to have a fixed end date. Is that a true story? Have you heard? Is this what your sources have told you, Simon?
As far as I know, the creator of One Piece, which actually gets into like my next question here, the creator of One Piece, I think, has been quite open about the series for a very long time, especially when fans come up with their own ideas on the series. But he's also been talking about the ending of the series, saying that we probably have at least another 5 or 10 years of story within the One Piece universe. So as far as I know, I don't think he said like we're going to be stopping at a specific number. All I know is that I have like probably up to 5 or 10 years of story left. So.
Well, I mean, we all have to agree that the whole show is really about Doflamingo, right? Like that's going to be the big reveal. Is that all of this Straw Hat nonsense was just dithering until you got to the fact that realized that Dolphy has been pulling all of the strings all along, and is the One Piece, right? That's what we're gonna find out, right?
Possibly.
Don't you think?
I'm entirely maybe who knows really, but which actually gets into the question I was just about to ask here, which was, have fans ever spoken to you about like their own ideas and theories for the series, and what have been your thoughts on how the series will end?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone likes to come up and talk about their ideas, and that's when I can just fan out the way are there. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, or what about this, and have other ideas, but at the same time, with knowing that no one asks us. We're so late in the process. We're so removed from the process that no one's going to value our opinion or listen to it, at least my opinion. But no, I love the fact that, well, and also that as you said, the creator takes those in, like is aware of what fans think, and maybe lets it impact the story in some way. But in terms of my views, like I said, I think it's all Dofi's game. It's all a long game. It's gonna be just like, Usual Suspects, Kaiser Soze. You're gonna realize it was him all along, that he put everything into place, and that it's all about Doflamingo, because he's the hero, right? He's totally the hero of this series.
Well, of course, I think as many villains would probably say, none of the best villains think of themselves as villains. Everyone is like the hero of their own story, in a way.
Exactly. That's why it's incumbent upon me as an actor to believe that my character is A, a hero, and B, the main lead in the story.
Well, that's actually interesting that you talk about that, because there was an article I came across with the creator where he spoke about that if one of the three admirals, Akainu or Sakazuki, however you want to think about him really, said that if he had been the main protagonist of One Piece from the very start, the whole series would have been over in an entire year. My question to you is, if Doflamingo had been the main protagonist of One Piece, how long do you think he would have been able to go through the entire story?
See, but that's what I'm saying, Simon. He is the main protagonist, and that's why it is sustained for 574 episodes, because they've let it bubble just below the surface, where you don't know that he's the protagonist. No, I don't know. I think the fact that there are so many different characters, the pantheon of One Piece is so massive. When you look at any voiceover actor, at least that's ever worked in Funimation, has been on One Piece at least 3 times, because the show goes on forever. There's so many characters, so prolific. I got to do a character years and years and years ago before Dolphy, called Chaka, that was a great, in the Alabaster arc, that was a great character. So many good characters, and that they let these characters have like real and meaningful arcs. They're not just side stories to fill time to get between fight scenes. Like, so many, they take so much care at making fully rounded stories in each new arc that they go into, and I think that's one of the things that has made it so successful and is also so impressive about it, is that it's not one story about one protagonist. It is 1,000 different stories that they have managed to weave together and keep in the same universe. Marvel fans are impressed that there's 22 movies. And I'm like, whatever, One Piece has got 570 episodes, and they've been doing the same thing.
That's fantastic. And that's definitely true how you spoke about that, because one of the things I have noticed about, of course, with the One Piece series is the idea on, like, and I did a review about this myself, where it goes into the idea of of morality in the series, is that not everyone in that, when you read the series on paper, it's like the series of like pirates versus the Marines, or like pirates are supposed to be the evil people, Marines are supposed to be the good people. But in the case of One Piece, however, they kind of end up blurring the lines between like good and evil. They stick it in like this very gray area in some way, which to me was just wow, was absolutely fantastic. At least that's
what interests me about anime in general. The shows that excite me the most are the ones that explore that kind of gray area. I mean, some of the shows that I've been lucky enough to be in, like Attack on Titan is another one that really grays the area between good guy and bad guy in some interesting ways. And then My Hero Academia recently, with the Stain arc, suddenly the villains and the good guys were not. It wasn't just one story. It wasn't a black and white story anymore. It went into that gray area, and that kind of changed the way the stories in My Hero were told. Even though that was a really small character, it kind of changed the arc of things. So those are always the most interesting ones for me. You mentioned Yu Yu Hakusho in the open. That was a bad guy I got to play years and years and years ago. My first bad guy I ever got to play. But Shinobu Sensei was clearly a bad guy doing terrible things and hurting people, but had a real moral code. And I'm really fascinated, and I think that's an area that, especially with American audiences, the creators of American content were afraid to deal with that kind of nuance for a long time. Now that all of the media is streaming services have happened and HBO and Netflix are king, there's a lot more good storytelling happening and nuanced and interesting storytelling. But the fact that anime was willing to go to those places and that the manga were willing to go to those places is hugely to their credit and is one of the reasons why it's always survived and why it's interesting.
That's definitely true on that, and that's absolutely fantastic about that. Now, speaking about, of course, more on One Piece, now there were reports on the supposed live-action One Piece TV series where fans have started fan casting, particularly on the three admirals, and these are actually, not sure if you're aware of this article, but these were some of the fan castings they started putting for the three admirals, with Josh Brolin as Akainu, Will Smith as Aokiji, and Adam Sandler as Kizaru. What have been your thoughts on those castings for the three admirals?
Well, you sent me that article just in setting up for this, which was the first time I had seen it. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you get Josh Brolin in anything, and it's going to be quality. I mean, if you look at just what he did with Thanos, like he's amazing and impressive. And No Country for Old Men is another one that comes to mind. So yeah, I think you can't lose there. I would again like to put myself in the frame for Doflamingo. I kind of have let things go a little bit in this quarantine time, but I'm trying to work out. I don't know that I'm going to have, the 18 to 20 pack that Dolphy has, but I would totally be up for playing the live action version. I do have short blonde hair, and I'm willing to roll those glasses. But yeah, I think it's going to be. It's always almost impossible to cast things like that already have such strong fan connections that you're gonna screw it up with a huge portion of whatever group you're trying to make happy. Like if you try to make the blockbuster movie crowd happy, then you're gonna get all famous people and the true fans are mad. Like it's really hard to get that right, but at the same time, there's a huge fan base, so I can't think that they wouldn't have a tremendous amount of money to make this live action if it happens. And with that amount of money, you can go get the right people.
That's true.
That's what you want.
Absolutely, that's definitely true on that, because as many people will know on like live action anime adaptations, that they've had a pretty bad history, so to speak, on like a whole bunch of other projects like Dragon Ball Evolution and and of course from a couple of other stories at that time. But I have to probably say though that I think with the success of like Sonic the Hedgehog possibly breaking the curse of the video game film series, it's totally possible that we'll one day see that one series based on an anime that's finally going to break that curse.
What about Detective Pikachu?
And Detective Pikachu.
Come on now.
And Detective Pikachu as well. Of course, I forgot to mention that, but but
I have to say, those are the movies that I only watch on planes because you have a very different bar for a plane movie. Like you go to a movie theater, it's got to be great. You watch on a plane, you're like, I need to be distracted for an hour and a half. And those adaptations that are always a risk. You're totally right, because there have been so many terrible attempts. But those, I was like, on a plane, very tired. Detective Pikachu, thoroughly entertained. May have to do with Ryan Reynolds more than anything else, but they sometimes they work out. But yeah, you would think with One Piece being as profitable as it is, that there would be some legit capital behind it. And that's the thing. All of these movies and adaptations that you've talked about were made for like $5 in some obscure studio because they're considered fringe properties. But hopefully the continued growth of the anime fan base and the vocal nature of it to make itself known, and that's the unique thing about the anime fan base, is that they have forcefully made themselves known and made the world aware of them through the conventions and through the things that happen all over the globe, both in the English-speaking countries and elsewhere, have really made themselves known as a viable factor, which means they're a viable economic factor. And so hopefully that helps those kind of projects get made with bigger budgets.
Absolutely.
Although the bigger the budget, the less likely they're going to let me play a role. So maybe I should stick to hoping for the DIY version.
That's fantastic. And usually I think for the most part that think a lot of fan films and I think a lot of DIY like approaches to those big projects usually somehow end up being better than the feature film versions themselves. So it's definitely true, and I think if for the fact because I know that they're doing the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender, which that series, even though that's not considered anime. It is inspired a lot from anime projects, which I know has the original creators Mike and Brian working on the series themselves. So I think it's as you mentioned about before, because with anime now starting to blow up hugely. What I think one of the ways that they can be truly successful, I think in any live action anime adaptation, is to get I think the creator involved in the project, or even people that are associated with that series involved in the project. At least to me, that's my opinion about it, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's why you saw such an uptick in the quality of superhero films, is because finally the nerds are in charge. The geeks of like us who love the stuff are finally now getting to make some of the economic decisions, and they're finding directors who love it and know it, and finding directors and writers and producers who believe in, understand, and want to see it brought about, as opposed to somebody loves it and then they pass it off to the money-making machine who then ignores it completely. Like, the fact that nerd culture has become culture, the dominant media culture of our day, is now what used to be fringe nerd culture, which is great for me as someone who's grown up a nerd my whole life. Those people are now the ones running studios. Marvel is calling its own shots. And so the fact that the true fans are empowered to create means hopefully that we will continue to get better and better content as a result of it.
Absolutely, and that's fantastic. Now, another series that comes to mind for me was, in fact, Snow White with the Red Hair, where you played a Sakaki to Todd Haberkorn's Prince Raj. What was it like playing in that series?
Well, Haberkorn is an amazing, amazing human being. Again, we don't get to work together often. Like, none of us in anime, we're all alone in the booth recording either before the other people have or after the other people have. But I have gotten to be in many, many shows with Todd and known Todd over the years, and also helped with short films and things he's done. He's a very prolific individual. But that show is fun because that was just, trying to contain pure ego. Like, dealing with the pure ego of Todd's character and just being frustrated by his inability to focus and stay on task is a trope that gets repeated a whole lot. I mean, it was Samurai 7 had the same story. There's even shades of it in the new Black Clover, but Julius is nicer, but still can't be kept on task by Marx, his handler. So the idea of like master and handler is a long-standing trope. So it was fun to get to play that and get to be a part of one of those dynamics, and also just get to play against Todd is always fun.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, with regards to Snow White with the Red Hair, because I know for a fact that they stopped at about the end of season 2, but the manga is still kind of continuing on at this point. So, would you be interested in coming back into that series if a third season develops?
Oh, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Again, I don't know how much clout you throw around over there, Simon, but if you can make that happen, absolutely make it happen. Let him know Rob McCollum is up for it.
Fantastic. Awesome. Now, other long-running series that you starred in was as Jaleel Fernandez in Fairy Tail and Rena Braun in Attack on Titan, which you spoke a fair bit about today. What was it like playing those characters and stepping into the world of Fairy Tail and Attack on Titan?
Well, Fairy Tail was one of those that we knew was going to be huge. It was a hugely successful manga. The anime was much in demand and anticipated. And it was one of those that we knew was going to have a really long arc. So everyone was kind of keyed up when it was audition time. Sorry, adjusting my chair. Everyone was keyed up on when it was audition time for Fairy Tail, and everyone was kind of jockeying for positions. And Jalal is an interesting character because when he's introduced to the series, there are two characters, Jalal and Seagrain, and they look very similar, and the director, again, I think that was Chris Bevins, said, hey, I want you to play these two characters. They're related to each other, so they sound the same, but I want you to have different characterizations for both of them. I want you to try to really separate them as people. Jalal is one person, Seagrain is another person. And again, gave me the same advice. Don't read. Don't read up on this. I want you to experience it in real time. And it was only, at the kind of almost the end of the season when it is revealed that Seagrain and spoilers, by the way, if you haven't watched it yet, fast forward 15 seconds. They are the same person. They are the same person. And one of them is just a projection of the Seagrain is just a projection of Jalal, who is up to no good. And so I tried to make them separate people because I was told by the director they were separate people, and then it blew my mind just the way it did the audiences when I found out, like, what? It's all the same dude. And then there's another dude on another plane that's another projection called Mystican who doesn't sound or look like them, but somehow is still them. Yeah, it's very confusing. But it was great to get to come be a part of that and to be one of the characters while not a lead in every episode that did come back again and kind of stayed a presence throughout the entire series. It was neat to get to be a part of, and that's the one that people really responded to and come up and like when they want DVD signed or artwork signed to Jalal is one of the big players. So that's kind of how you gauge whether something has landed or not, is if people want to talk to you about it or come cosplayed as your character. I will say he was more fun when he was a bad guy. He turned nice and kind of got a little less interesting. A little bit whiny. A little bit whiny. It's all right. It happens. I like the bad guys.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful right there. And you obviously spoke a little bit about with Attack on Titan as well, but other series and roles that you're best known for, and I mentioned about, of course, during the intro, was, of course, Baki from Baki the Grappler, Sensei from Yu Yu Hakusho, and Shinya Kogami in Psycho-Pass, Switchblade, and Kazi no Stigma. What was it like playing across those series?
Well, it's cool when you get to play different, the good guy in one and the bad guy in another, and like getting to be the young, 15-year-old hero that's way up here in the voice and super excited, and we're gonna do things. We can do it. And then the grizzled bad guy that's just down here and doesn't really have to exert himself ever. And doesn't really worry about things. So it's fun to get to play different things and to also kind of know when you walk in the building that you're not going to know what you're walking into. And sometimes having to move from booth to booth and do both of those characters or a range of characters in the same day is always a challenge. And we kind of have to talk with the person in charge of the booking to go like, oh, this guy's really yelly. He's real screamy, so can we put him at the end of the day? Because that's going to fry my voice, and I won't be able to do the other guy that's really normal and talks up here and has a high register, and my voice is going to be way too fried. So let's reverse these. They always try to do the screaming at the end of the day. Do the screaming at the end of the day, and then you can do the other stuff. But yeah, it's nice to get to play some good guys and some bad guys. I've been doing a lot of bad guys. It's weird. You kind of go into phases where the directors know you as a certain thing, and then you get called in for that. So, Stain was a short arc on My Hero Academia, but getting to play kind of grisly, rough-voiced bad guys. And then so it was nice to get to do a new good guy in Black Clover. Julius the Wizard King is a totally good, just sweet, excited about life magic nerd who happens to be super powerful and the Wizard King, but it was nice to get to be a good guy again.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful, and that's definitely true how you spoke about, because most of the roles that I've seen you play across your career has been mostly playing a lot of bad guys, but you've also played across a variety of good people as well, and even people that are also somewhere in that neutral kind of category. as well. Not sure whether they're good, not sure whether they're bad, sort of category as well. But sometimes it can be very difficult to be be known outside of like a certain character that you're best known for. Like, oh yeah, I'm best known for playing like bad guys. Or like when you look at like Steve Bloom, for example, he's like one of the most prolific voice actors in the industry, but he's been best known for playing a lot of like a lot of bad guys or like really gruff heroes. And another example that comes to for me is Chris Sabat, who's been known for playing again bad guys, very gruff heroes, but he can push out into like characters that are on the opposite end of the spectrum, like outside of what you think of what he's normally known for doing.
Well, that's the beauty of voice work in general, is that if people are seeing your face, they're going to put you in a certain category. They're going to put you in an age category. They're going to put you in a, what you can play. And with voiceover, you can play anything you can sound like. So I can play Oda Nobunaga as a crotchety old undead, in Drifters, the undead king of Japan. Not the king, but you know what I mean. Unifier of the shogunate. But you can play a 15-year-old kid that's trying to get a date all at the same time if you can go there with your voice, and so it gives you a lot of range. Chris Sabat is now just better at being Chris Sabat than he is at any acting, but he's a hell of an actor, so he can play a lot of different roles. But now he doesn't have to. Everyone just wants him to sound like Chris Sabat, which I don't blame him. That's what I'd want too.
That's fantastic. Now, a couple of other roles that that I also discovered when I was looking up on your career was that you played Hajime Saido and Shizo Tokishawa from the live-action Rurouni Kenshin and Black Butler film series. What was it like playing those characters in the live-action world?
Well, so I'm guessing, yeah, you'd mentioned that in the list. So I think those were. We dubbed the English version of the Japanese live-action films.
Yes.
So we didn't get to play the characters ourselves, which is always would be more fun. But dubbing the live-action films is a very different world, because those are usually quick turnovers, much lower budget, and as opposed to every line being scripted, done in the anime world, we do one line at a time, and we make sure it fits. And as much grief as people give us for matching the flaps, the Funimation people take it very seriously and work really hard to write scripts that will match the mouth movements, even in a way the Japanese don't. And so it's exacting, and it takes a tremendous amount of time. But the movies are usually done like, hey man, we got a day, you got to knock this out. We're gonna watch it once. We're gonna do a page at a time. And in those, you really try to act it more. And be true to the character as opposed to worrying about the flaps, because the flaps just aren't going to match. You're not going to match the mouth movements. So there's a little bit more focus on matching the performance. And so it's kind of a different side of your brain, whereas the anime dubbing is a lot about flat matching, and it's very technical, and it's the live action stuff is way more fun. And I've gotten to do a fair amount of that, just different Hong Kong projects that they brought over, and some of them are just quick turn and burn, like, we got a day, come in, you're going to knock this out in 2 hours because we got to go. But it's fun because you do a whole page of dialogue and you actually just play the scene as opposed to deconstructed one line at a time. So it's almost like is exercising a different muscle to get to do the live actions. But I like them.
Fantastic. And speaking of it, of course, a little bit more with Hajime Saido, because, excuse me, because mostly when I think about with the character, there's obviously the anime version, which was played by Kirk Thornton, and were you quite nervous having to do the dubbed voice over this live action character? And did you base your performance of Hajime Saido off from Kirk Thornton's, or did you just go off and just do your own thing?
No, they very much said, do your own thing. Don't try to do an impersonation either of the Japanese actor playing it, because the Japanese actor playing it didn't try to do an anime voice, like match the anime in any way. They were really trying to do, it was just a movie, it was going to be their own thing. So they said, just imagine that you, Rob McCollum, were cast in this role, play this role. And so there was a conscious effort not to try to do that. Because if you do it, you're never going to do it well. And then if you halfway do it, then they're like, well, why didn't they just do it with the person, why didn't they get that guy? But again, it was a different company that had the rights to it, and there's always legal reasons for everything that they don't explain to us. But yeah, it was very much just do your own thing.
Right. Fantastic. Now, speaking about now, of course, we've had like a lot of revivals and reboots of a lot of different shows over the last few years, from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood to Fruits Basket, which is now hitting season 2. And if you wanted to, and of course, so with Dragon Ball Super, like if you wanted to do another revival or reboot of one show you've worked on, what would you want that to be?
Well, I would love to get to do Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, more of that, because I played Scar's brother, and he's an important character that's barely on screen at all, and he doesn't get a name. And I was always so mad that he doesn't have his own name. He's just credited as Scar's brother. And I'm like, oh, if that came back, I would get a name. I'd get to find out what that guy's actual name is. But I would love to see more of Psycho-Pass. Psycho-Pass is one of my favorite shows that I ever got to do. My character was in season 1, then not really in season 2, and then comes back in the movie. And I would love to find out more about what he was doing in that time away. He kind of leaves the story and is going off having adventures elsewhere, and I wish that they would come back and let us know what Kogami was up to. Because I think people like his character, and I really liked his character, and I would love to find out. So if there was ever a reboot of Psycho-Pass or additional added bonus content, I would love to do more Psycho-Pass.
Fantastic. Now, obviously skipping ahead to the spin-off question here, because you kind of answered that one with like, I'd love to see a Goten spin-off series, which I think would be fantastic in that sense. But where do you hope to see yourself with?
I also would love to see that as just like a wacky sitcom.
Yeah, that would be pretty epic if they did something like that.
Like 80s music, like bump 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 bump. Oh, Goten.
That would be fantastic if they did something like that. That would be amazing if they did that. But going across a bit further, where do you hope to see yourself with regards to acting in the long run?
Well, again, the beauty of being voice only is that you can get old and fat and ugly and keep right on working, which is my absolute hope. I would love to still be doing this 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I do a lot of other things. I'm a producer and a writer and do a lot of on-camera things, and all of those will go away at a certain time. But the beauty of voiceover work is, as long as you can still croak out a sound, there's a lot of old dudes in anime, so there's always work. There's always the hope that you can just keep right on going and just keep playing older and older characters. But yeah, it's a fun world. It's not the most lucrative niche of the acting world that you can set your flag in, but it's one of those that can just go on forever, because we're never going to stop. We're never going to run out of stories, and somebody's got to voice them. I mean, I would love to get to do some original anime. I've done very little of that. Original animation, meaning to originate the character and have them draw to your performance, as opposed to what we do, which is dubbing after the fact. So I haven't gotten to do a lot of that or motion capture at this point. I've done some. I would love to do more of that. I would love to do more video games. Video games are also very fun. They're much shorter, much smaller time commitment. Yeah, I got to do Axton in Borderlands 2 and Max the War Mage and Orcs Must Die, and those are fun. So I would love to do more video games too. And then can continue to go to the cons. I've yet to go to Australia for a convention. So again, if you've got strings to pull, Simon, make it happen. I want to come over. I want to come visit.
Absolutely. I will definitely send out recommendations to every Comic-Con I know in Australia, and in Melbourne for that matter, to make it happen. Because that would be epic. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, again, once we can all travel again, Australia has always been on my bucket list ever since I was a small child. So I would love to come. I actually had some friends that were set to be over there for some conventions this summer that have now unfortunately been canceled. So they were gutted. But I work a lot in the UK, but I would love to get to come over to Australia.
Fantastic. And would definitely want to make it happen as much as anybody else. So there you go. Now, what two shows have you worked on would you want to see a crossover between story-wise and character-wise?
Ooh, really good question. Okay. So, so there's a parallel between Yu Yu Hakusho Sensui that I played 15 years ago and Hero Killer Stain in the present world, that they are both these moralistic, totally evil, but high moral code guys. So it'd be interesting to see them team up. There's a show called Drifters that I don't think got a huge amount of attention, but it had historical figures that had all been yanked out of their existences just before the moment of death and kind of put into this alternate reality. So they were kind of in this big war game, just seeing what happened when, like Attila the Hun and Hitler were going against each other. Like, what would that look like? And that's where I got to play Oda Nobunaga, and I would love to see him kind of game playing more, and maybe there's a character that I played that's Date Masamune in Son Goku Basra Samurai Kings, which is in the same historical line. Like, he's an early samurai, and Oda Nobunaga is the end of that samurai chain. And one of the things that happened in Drifters is that different people from their own life got pulled into this reality. So I would love to see Date Masamune, the one-eyed dragon of Sengoku Basra, get pulled into Drifter's world, and I could have a scene between Date and Oda Nobunaga, but it would all be me.
Oh, that would be fantastic. That would be amazing right there. And what is like one character or series that you've ever wanted to play or ever wished that you played?
So what that I haven't played that I wish I had?
Yes, that's right.
Gotcha. Well, we were all really hoping that we would all have a chance at One Punch Man. There was a bidding wars, and Funimation was in the running, trying to do the dub of One Punch Man, and all of us wanted to be in that because that's such a huge show. So I would love to have gotten to do that. I also always wish that there would be a Van Helsing reboot, because I would love to play Van Helsing. Always, that was one of the first shows that I really got into, and would love to get a shot at that. Those would be the big two.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful right there. Now, and across your entire career with all the roles that you've done in the past, what would you say has been the one role that resonates with you the most?
I knew you were going to ask this question, and I thought, I'm going to come up with a really good answer for it, and then I don't have a really good answer for it. So there's a very, very sweet show about a guy who is a calligrapher, and he gets way too overwrought and gets sent to a small village. His name is Honda, and he has to like adapt to village life, and struggles with that, and like the small town that he's put into, and the neighborhood kids that won't leave him alone, and he thinks of himself as a big city fancy artist, and so that show, not that I think of myself as a big city fancy artist, but that show was a character that I was like, this is just sweet. This is just about a guy figuring things out and trying to find his place in the world, and also being charmed by the simplicity of life. Barakamon is the original show, and then Honda-kun was the spinoff, but about him in high school. But Barakamon was one of those shows that I kind of parallel to where I am right now with the pandemic, that we're forced to be at home. We're forced to not travel. We're forced to rediscover, through all the trauma that people are having by it, those of us that have not been directly affected by the disease at this point, are kind of just forced with like figuring out what life looks like, and at a much slower pace and in a much smaller sphere. And so that's a role and a show that I find resonating with me right now a lot more than it ever did before. Was that kind of the I don't know, the joy that you can find in just a community and in your neighbors and in a smaller world. We're always pushing so hard to expand and expand and expand, and the idea that this whole insanity has forced us to constrict, while it's hugely problematic for the economy and people who are desperate for work and trying to survive, there are some interesting things in terms of our soul and psyche that are happening as a result of it, and I will be very interested to see what we all look like when we come out the other side.
That's absolutely fantastic right there. I can tell you straight up, if this was like a live action talk show in front of a studio audience right now, they'd probably be giving a standing ovation right now as we speak. That is just fantastic.
See, then it's good that I didn't plan it, because if I tried to plan something, it would have been super cheesy and it just wouldn't have worked at
all. That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, a two-part question that I have here is, what is your view on where the animation and voice acting industry stands within the entertainment industry? And if you could change one thing about the entertainment industry, what would that be?
Well, I think in terms of the voice acting, first of all, there's a real divide between original animation acting and dub acting. Dub acting is always the redheaded stepchild that doesn't get a whole lot of respect. And it's actually, and I get it. Most people prefer to watch the subtitled versions in the original performance. I do often as well. I'm not mad at anybody for that. But there are some really great performances that get given by the actors trying to do the English dub and bring them to life. So I think slowly but surely, largely because of the fact of the anime conventions that don't have the original actors because they can't get them, but they can get the dub actor to come in. The dub actor is starting to become more recognized and a little bit more of an artist in their own right, in terms of the way that the fandom views them. But the industry, doesn't put a great deal of stock in it. There's no residuals. It's a one-time. You're paid for your time in the booth and nothing more, no matter, even if it's on, Cartoon Network and gets, 2 million or 12 million views. But it's slowly but surely getting more respect. I think voiceover in general has really come a long way in the last, 5 years. It used to be a thing that, like, the serious actors and the serious film actors and TV actors didn't want to do voice. And then the success of, huge properties where they realize, like, oh, I live forever now because I was in a Disney film, that has kind of changed the game, which is great because it means more respect for the craft of voice acting, but it also means that we obscure, unknown voice actors have a whole lot more competition, because now we're going up against, John Hamm and Tina Fey for the same roles that we used to audition for just as voice actors based on the performance alone. So it has definitely gotten more crowded, but it has gotten more respect along the way, and so I appreciate it, and I'm happy to get to be a part of it.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful right there. Now, without going into any spoilers, what's next for Robert McCollum for the fans to know about?
Man, I wish I had spoilers. But because of this shutdown, everything is pretty much locked down, so we don't know what's coming up or what may be coming soon. Like I said, we do know there's more One Piece coming out in the anime world. There's more Doflamingo to come. That's already been recorded and in the can and is being mixed and is going to be released now. And I think we're going to start new production on some of the other shows that will start back. As I said, I was lucky enough to be Julius in Black Clover, and I hope that I might get to do some more with Black Clover. You never know. No spoilers, can't say anything, but would be great. But other than that, I am available, man. If you've got a project, you let me know, because everybody's got nothing but time right now. So who knows? Like, there's some podcast projects that I worked on and developed that we're now trying to figure out, can we do what we do on those from home, because they're narrative dramas and we have a lot of sound design on them, and so it's not just a podcast where you can sound like you're in your living room. You have to sound like you're in 1865. So we're trying to work on other ways to bring those back, but it's going to require, some creative thinking on ways to move forward, and then also see how long it takes to come back to some sense of normalcy. Texas is one of the states that's trying to open everything up right now already, and we're like, I don't know that that's a great idea. I don't know that we're done yet. I know you want us to be done, but so it's that balance between wanting to move forward and also not wanting to put people's lives at risk. So I'm like, I can hang out I can just stay at my house for another month if I need to.
Fantastic. And that's definitely true about that, because it's obviously because of what's happening with the whole pandemic and everything, as you mentioned about before, it's kind of shut down a little bit in there, but it also is giving that sense of uncertainty at this point. But it's I think it's as a friend of mine once said to me, is just take it one day at a time, it may end a lot faster than you think. So there.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't know which way it's going to go. I mean, sadly, the virus is going to teach us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we have to just again take the small mercies where they come. Like for example, people can still listen to a podcast right now.
Absolutely.
Maybe there's more people listening to a podcast. Maybe your listenership will double because everyone is trapped at home and looking for new content. That's the hope.
That's exactly it right there. Now, and final question, what do you think Doflamingo would say if he was in Australia?
Oh, Doflamingo loves islands, and Doflamingo wants to own them. So I think he would definitely just say, I'll take this. This will be fine. Why don't you let me run this? I'll sort out all your problems, and you just let me be in charge. That sounds fair. I think that's what Doflamingo would say.
Fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic right there. Robert McCallum, thank you so much indeed. It's been an absolute honor.
Simon, thanks so much for having me. Again, hopefully I will see you somewhere in Melbourne at a convention sometime soon, whenever the world is unlocked. I would love to shake your hand, if that's even allowed in the future. If not, I'll just give you an elbow bump.
Absolutely, that would be fantastic. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Hey, just keep in touch. I'm terrible at doing all of the Twitter and Instagramming, but I have a Facebook fan page, Robert McCollum Voiceover, voice actor, Robert McCollum Voice Actor, I think is what it's called. Anyway, look for that. Send me a message if you listen to this. If you have questions, I'm trying to get better about engaging now and answering questions and requests and things. So I would love to start the dialogue while we're all trapped at home. So just reach out on the fan page or on Twitter or on the Instagram. I think I have an Instagram. Simon, do I have an Instagram? I don't know. I think I have an Instagram. But I definitely have a Facebook fan page. So if you want to reach out and give a shout, let us know what you think, what you're watching, and what you like.
Absolutely, that is fantastic. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Robert McCallum, you can check out the links, which I'll put in the description once the interview is finally up on YouTube. And don't forget, subscribe to HannaTalk and follow me on both Facebook and Twitter. And be sure to comment below if you have any suggestions or requests as well. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Robert McCallum signing off. Bye for now.
Thanks, Simon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.